Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Modern CFO podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Seski. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Tim Brown, CFO of Dakota. Tim, thank you so much for joining me today.
Andrew, thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to chat with you, but first, let's quickly cover what we're going to chat about broadly, and we'll let you dive right in. I think the key takeaways are going to be all about driving a unique culture during and exiting the pandemic. I think we're also going to be able to cover really what you feel is underestimated in the world, which I'm very excited to dive into. And of course, what Dakota is, what they're trying to tackle, and the way the firm has evolved over the years. First, though, I want to take us back to your early career at EY. Can you walk me through the progression of your time in kind of consulting at EY and into your first private company leadership role?
Sure. So I went to undergrad in Boston, graduated with a business degree, concentration in accounting, started with Ernst & Young, like many accounting majors, in the Boston office, worked quite a bit across different industries, primarily in financial services. And, while certainly appreciated the accounting aspect of it, recognized that was probably not a fully career profession, if you will, for me. Went back to business school, and leaving business school, worked for Bain Consulting, focused on strategy consulting, spent most of my time based in the US, but actually spent some time based in Europe as well. And as I left Bain, made what was a little bit of an unconventional move to a very early stage startup. At the time I was living in Atlanta. This startup was based there, focused on a clean technology that had some promise to transform the way fuels and chemicals were made to more cleaner options. Spent about 8 years there, sort of leading strategy and finance efforts on that side. And as that pursuit sort of wound down, ended up at Dakota about 4 years ago, similar process, sort of leading the finance and strategy efforts here.
So for those who don't know Dakota, it began as a boutique fundraising firm, right? That, the third party marketer with a ton of high energy, but the business has evolved into unique platform and data source as well. So can you talk about some of the origins and how you met with the founders of Dakota and really how that entire business has transformed? And then we'll be able to bring that right back into how investment sales as an industry has had to adjust in this current environment.
So Dakota started about 15, 16 years ago, as you mentioned, as a raising money for other boutique investment firms. And, something that very early on Dakota, and continues to this day, is very successful at doing. One of the reasons we've been so successful is that, our founder is very much a data junkie and has a consistent pursuit of getting high quality data for the sales team and for our business. And as a result, we built a very robust data set of institutional allocators. Over the years, we've had a number of firms that have come to us wanting to utilize us to help them raise money. And one of the challenges with third-party marketing is it's not a scalable business, right? There's a very small number of firms that we can help raise money and do it effectively. So we began to look at other ways that we could help some of these other firms that we really like, but just in a different way of doing it. And as a result, Dakota Marketplace was founded or born about 3 years ago now.
So what is Dakota Marketplace?
So Marketplace is a robust platform with a lot of available information on institutional allocators, right? What they buy, what they don't buy, what investment vehicles they need to be successful on their platform, what they're invested in today, et cetera. And really the key difference for us versus other platforms that are like it available is that, we kind of have this trademark term, built by fundraisers for fundraisers, right? We just take a different approach in terms of, recognizing what information is important and what can be helpful to really help our customer. And our customer is very uniquely a investment salesperson, someone who wakes up every day looking to raise money for the strategies that they represent.
So Dakota has raised, for our listeners who don't know, over $40 billion for clients since 2006. I think one of the things that's fundamentally changed just over the last few years, where we say fundraisers, built by fundraisers for fundraisers, I think that person looks a little different. Their job looks a little different today, where what would have been being on the road almost, every day of the year in meetings went completely virtual. How did that affect the business and your strategy? And then I'd love to dive into how you thought about the leadership in trying to drive the same high energy culture that Dakota has.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it was a big adjustment, right? People who were in investment sales up until the pandemic were on the road, if not every week of the year, quite a bit. And you were constantly out, having meetings with potential buyers of your strategies, going to conferences, trade shows, et cetera, to sort of meet potential buyers for your strategies, right? Your goal is to constantly find people who are interested in your strategy and sort of move them through the investment process to ultimately make an allocation. And really overnight, when the pandemic hit, that changed. Travel was, essentially halted for quite a period of time. People were not taking in-person meetings. Vast majority of people were not working in offices. And it just required a very quick fundamental shift in terms of how you can continue to be effective in that role. I think our team adapted really well, as did the industry, right? And just like a lot of industries, right? You can't meet live, you meet over Zoom, you meet over sort of some of these other means where you can, not be in the same location, but still have effective discussions. But certainly it's an adjustment, right? If you've spent your entire career on the road all the time, and then all of a sudden you're not able to do that, it's certainly a pretty significant adjustment. Now, I think for the software side of our business, it actually gave us a little bit of a tailwind, right? Because if you were, again, constantly on the road, and that's how you use those opportunities to meet new and potential buyers for your strategies, you had to find other means, right? And certainly Marketplace was a means that could help sort of bridge that gap from sort of what you were used to what the current situation was.
So Dakota has listed, on the website, these pillars of know who to call on, be a master messenger, have a killer follow-up system, focus on what matters most, walk the 8 feet, don't go cowboy, and ask in all caps. How did you come up with these pillars, and how do you think that they carried you and your team through some of the more tumultuous times? Obviously, you had the foresight to create, this data platform, years ahead of the pandemic that really brought and probably supported all of the efforts that you had been making through the pandemic. But I want to kind of shift over to thinking about how listeners can think about creating these types of not only products within their business that will stand the test of time and also be, adaptive to current market demands, but also the types of personalities that you need and types of character that you need when you're hiring and bringing people on in a more digital environment.
Yeah, I think culture has been one of those things that's always been very important at Dakota. When I joined about 4 years ago, there was, roughly 10 people, many of them who had been at the firm for quite some time. And it was, very evident from really day one what that culture was. But as our, businesses started to grow, and as we've looked to add really double the size of the team in the last 18, 24 months, so coinciding with the pandemic, it's been very important for us to sort of not only formalize or sort of write down, for lack of a better term, what those cultural components are, as opposed to just sort of people understanding what they are, but for us to really lead with that within our hiring process, right? I think, each firm will have a slightly different culture, right? For the most part, no culture is better than others. I think it's like knowing yourself as a human being, right? It's knowing who you are as a company, knowing what attributes are important to everyone at that company, and really helps you identify people who sort of fit well with that and also have sort of similar views of the world, if you will, and are likely to be great teammates that you bring on. And I think as we've, like a lot of companies that were doing a lot of hiring during the pandemic, it was a little bit of a change getting used to that, right? You can't even bring someone to the office to meet with everyone as part of that hiring process. And I think as we got to really formally documenting sort of what are the key components of our culture, and we lead with it in all of our job descriptions, right? It's really the first couple paragraphs. Here's our culture. Here's the things that are important to us. If these are things that resonate with you, please let us know, because we think you could be a great addition to the Dakota team. I do a lot of the initial interviews in particular of candidates that we're meeting with, and it's inevitably, culture is one of the first things that brought up. And again, it's one of the things that we like to emphasize. Like, these are the things that are important to us. I think it doesn't mean different things that are important to others may not, there's no sort of good or bad in it, right? It's just really recognizing, what are those components of your culture that are important that you want people to come in and sort of add to and build on. And like I said, for us, it's really led to not only a greater degree of success in sort of bringing on new teammates, but also, one of the challenges a lot of companies facing is retaining, and it's really helped us retain employees as well, because we're doing a better job up front of, really laying out what's important to us in our culture and sort of people self-selecting into that.
So for the aspiring CFO with Excel open on their computer, listening to this while working through their spreadsheets, what is the role of the CFO or the modern CFO in your mind, where leadership and driving culture intersect with financial acumen?
Yeah, I think you use the term modern CFO, right? To me, for most companies, gone are the days where the CFO was the expert in the finance organization, right? I think those are table stakes for any CFO. I think really that modern CFO is really that true business partner of the CEO and the management team, really helping to lead a lot of different components of the organization, not necessarily just the finance component. And certainly culture is a key component of it, right? A lot of, larger organizations will have sort of separate departments, smaller organizations like Dakota that, CFO will wear multiple hats. And sometimes certainly at Dakota, the sort of HR, recruiting aspect is a big part of that, right? So really keeping in mind that importance of culture and really using that as a key component of all of that, all of those efforts to bring on additional teammates.
So you said, well, first of all, I have to mention that every once in a while during an episode, I tell listeners, because you've got that great rewind 30-second button on your phone or wherever you're listening to this podcast, I would say to pause and rewind and listen to that again. I think that is the perfect definition of the modern CFO, maybe one of the best we've had across all of our shows. So I thank you for that, Tim. We also talked a little bit about the relationship you have to have with your CEO. What is the ideal relationship in your mind, and what defines a successful modern CFO relationship with today's CEO?
Yeah, I think for a successful partnership, really think of a couple of key aspects. One is, how do you become that trusted person for the CEO to really be able to, get things done, handle things that they need taken care of, and have the confidence in you to be able to do that. I think the other big piece of that goes along with that is, if you think of many CEOs, they're oftentimes going to come up through a certain part of the organization. They're going to be a product technology person or a sales and marketing person, or they're just going to have natural proclivities towards certain aspects of the business or certain things that they may quite honestly just enjoy more than others. And I think in the spirit of true partnership, as the CFO, how do you handle some of those other things, right? How do you handle some of the aspects that maybe isn't their sort of day-to-day focus or things that they want to spend all of their time on? And really for the organization, take care of those aspects, right? And really allow the CEO to focus on, where they feel they can provide the most value. And, as the CFO, try to fill in some of the other pieces where they may not spend their time on a day-to-day basis.
What is something that most excites you on the horizon in the next maybe 1 to 3 years?
Yeah, one of the things that I think is great about Dakota is we have a very clear perspective of who our target customer is, right? Our target customer for all of the products and services we create is an investment salesperson. So a person who wakes up every day and whose job is to raise money for the investment strategies that they represent. And, having a number of people at the firm, including our founder, who have been in that industry their entire life, I think we have a very good perspective as to what types of tools, what types of services can help that person be more successful in their job. And one of the things that's exciting to me about Dakota is that we're never short of ideas of other things that we could do, other ways that we could help our customer sort of grow their careers. So what's exciting to me, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years out, is sort of just looking at our product pipeline, seeing what's coming, and sort of knowing that there's a bounty of ideas that will come after those that will continue to help us continue to add value and drive value for our customers.
That's really exciting. Do you have any advice for CFOs who have great relationship with their CEO, who are they have endless ideas? How do you internally think about matching and quickly testing what ideas are worth pursuing in the long term?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always an element of prioritization, right? What can make the biggest impact, right? But I think, one of the other things we do well here at Dakota is, this philosophy of, we call it sort of throw your hat over the wall, right? Where it's just try it, right? Not everything has to be sort of a fully baked idea before you're going to try it. So if you have an idea and you have the sort of basics down of it, give it a shot, right? What's the worst thing that happens? It doesn't work, right? You kind of that fail fast methodology. If it doesn't work, move on and try the next idea that's on the list. So I think it's one of the things we've done well here. We've done some things that haven't been successful, and then we've done some things that have been wildly successful, and we double down on those and continue to do more and continue to develop more things like those. So, one of the things, having spent a fair amount of time, never lived there, but spent a fair amount of time just with sort of venture capitalists in Silicon Valley in my prior life. There's sort of this methodology of fail fast, right? And I think, that's one of the things at Dakota we really live by, right? Give it a shot. Worst thing that happens, it doesn't work, limit your losses, move on and try something else.
Right. And you can entrust your team to do so because you've vetted them across these pillars and kind of from a cultural standpoint, right? So these are people that you can entrust to go out and have the autonomy to go actually try something independently to see if there are some members, right?
Is that, and it's also people who are comfortable with that, right? I mean, there's certain people that would sort of see any failure as something to be avoided at all costs, and there's others that sort of more comfortable with that concept.
I want to zoom back out for a minute and talk about one of my favorite questions on the podcast, which is, what do you feel is currently being underestimated in the world? And I know I've already talked about this briefly before recording, but I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on this, because it really, I think you drive home some really interesting points here that would be valuable for CFOs listening or listeners in general. So I'd love to hear your perspective there.
Yeah, one of the things that I think may be underestimated in certain circles is really the fundamental change of how people view work, and people in particular view, spending time in an office that's occurred over the last couple of years with the pandemic, right? You sort of see these changes in history where there's sort of just different, where viewpoints just are fundamentally changed and really don't go back to where they were before. And I do think that sort of the way people view work and the way people view particularly working in an office is one of those things that's changed over the last 2 years. And you still see, a number of these entities that are out there now. A lot of times those deadlines have gotten pushed back just due to variance and waves, if you will, but that are still talking about bringing back their employees to the office and sort of having them there 5 days a week. And it shall be seen what happens there, but I do think there's going to be some challenges with doing so, right? If you look at the number of studies that have been published of majorities of people that don't ever see themselves going back to the office on a 5-day a week basis, that have gotten comfortable with not having, long commutes, sitting in traffic or sitting on the subway, that, have found that they can be just as effective or more effective working in remote locations. I think it's going to be a challenge to get everyone to come back. And I think the companies that force it, unfortunately are probably going to lose some people as a result. And those people will be looking for more flexible arrangements. I know Dakota was a company that traditionally was a 5-day a week in the office, unless you were traveling, of course, for work prior to the pandemic. And we've, sort of on a much more flexible arrangement now. And I think that's going to be what a lot of companies end up doing going forward. I'd say one other point on that, Andrew. I know, at least for our size, we've done a lot of hiring over the last 18, 24 months. And inevitably, one of the first questions we always get in the interview process is sort of, what is our policy there? And 2 years ago, a lot of those questions were sort of born out of the people just not being comfortable being around groups of people, given what was going on. But I think of late, increasingly, it's more people that are, quite honestly looking because they see their company, at least outwardly saying that at some point in the near future, they're going to expect everyone to come back to the office every day. And that's just not something they're interested in. So I do think there will be, as we hopefully, this pandemic starts winding down and things return closer to normal, I do wonder if that's one of those things that's never going to return to where we were 2 years ago, right? That sort of many entities will sort of end up with this flexible philosophy where, some days you're in the office, some days you're at home, and as long as you're effective, it works.
Is that an optimistic or a pessimistic outlook on the future?
I don't think it's pessimistic. I think it's more just realism of, sometimes things change and they don't go back. I think the firms that recognize that, it's an optimistic view, right? Because there will be talent available on the market that maybe wouldn't have been otherwise, that due to their flexible nature, they'll be able to attract. The pessimists might be the firms that are a little bit more rigid in terms of bringing people back and, maybe lose some people as a result.
So do you have any final advice for either aspiring or current CFOs looking to mirror some of the effective things that Dakota has done? It seems like there are a number of differentiators from being product and idea led as a team. It sounds like there's a huge emphasis on really driving home culture that fits both as an organization and finding new people who also fit within that mold. Do you have any final thoughts for CFOs who are trying to implement anything similar, maybe even just formalizing some of these policies and processes and taking more of a leadership role? As you mentioned, that the modern CFO, their financial background is merely table stakes in being a front face and leader in an organization.
Just looking back on our experience, right? I think what really helped us as we were growing the team is really a lot of times culture is one of those things that people kind of know and understand. But I think for us, one of the turning points in terms of adding to the team is when we formally wrote it down, right? And it sounds like the simplest thing, but getting the right people together, formally writing it down and getting everyone behind it. And then for us, really leading with that in our interview process, right? Again, it's not that different cultures are better than others, right? It's more just being clear about what's important to you and what you want to be important for the people that join your firm. I think has really helped us add some great teammates who sort of, buy into that culture and have helped us grow and expand it. I think just increasingly, for modern CFO, really, it's thinking about all of the ways you can add value to the business over and above the financial component, right? It's one thing to know what the numbers are. It's another thing to be able to read into them and, help the leadership team decide what to do about it. And I think that's sort of one of the things I strive to do and hopefully have had some success doing. And certainly one of the things that I think successful CFOs are able to do.
That's amazing. And I'm really looking forward to, and for anyone who's listening, who's in the area, Dakota hosts a number of amazing meetups and events. And I know that that's expanding as well. Tim, is there anything right on the horizon that people should be aware of? And how do they get in contact with you or the Dakota team if they're interested in learning more about the marketplace?
Sure. So Dakota.com is our website. We have a page on there for events that we're hosting. Actually just renamed it this week called Dakota Cocktails. We actually just had a happy hour in Philly earlier this week, but we have them sort of in a number of locations really around the country periodically. So certainly, yes, if there's any interest in Dakota or any of the services that we offer, that's a great place to start. Also has contact information for not only myself, but also a number of my teammates who can help really with any of the questions you may have about Dakota or the services we offer.
Excellent. Well, Tim, thank you so much again for being on the Modern CFO podcast. I know we'll speak again very soon, but I hope you have a great weekend. And again, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to record today.
Thank you, Andrew.